I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I've got the dog in me today. Well, do you have that dog?
Whoa, that's just my soul opening this pod before I can speak actual words. But yeah, man, I'm Andrew freaking Quo over here.
just a couple of hounds, about to pod. I mean, feeling like a real pooch.
Do you want to invest in my new company? It's called Big Face Tea, Big Face Green Tea. It's big round face, moon face green tea.
Yeah, I would like to. I would like to invest in that, and everything I have, I want to put it into you because you're a tea grizzly.
That's right. You know, it's refreshing, but not too caffeinated. For everyone who's not on that Ozempic, it's a light dose of caffeine for all you dogs out there.
There's a lot to talk about this week.
My
a
God,
lot of great basketball stuff. We've got incredible topics that are hoops related to talk about.
Bad series, great topics.
Bad series, Doc out, Melo retiring,
Wemby,
Wemby, yeah, lots of stuff. But let's save that because we got other amazing things.
Quite the tease.
So you are an artist, from what I've heard. That seems to be something that you do, drawings, paintings, something along those lines.
It's true.
Were you immersed in the art world because of Freeze Week here in New York City?
More online than anything. I did the Independent, which was a week before. These art fairs are very confusing. They travel around the world. They kind of jump around locations sometimes within New York. Freeze was at the Shed again this year, which is a part of Hudson Yards, which is a fascinating zip code in Manhattan. Woo, Bloomberg, you really nailed that one.
Yeah, it's got all the charm of, I don't know, like Dubai.
Our friends were posting, I mean, it was for that clientele. Our friends were posting some delicious looking, like, I don't know, some sort of dip in the Mexican, huge Mexican food hall that was worth it. You know me, I am not opposed to disgusting displays of capitalism as long as there's a tasty morsel to sample.
As long as there's a little taste for the Quo dog.
Dogs got a munch, dude.
Like, can Quo get what's the vig? Well, just a little taste.
Yeah. Well, I do love the grab and go concept of dining at these places. So you know where my heart lies.
You are a sucker when it comes to a food hall.
Oh yeah, big time.
But yeah, I went up to Freeze, as you said. It was at the Shed, which is a uncharming building, to say the least. It's interesting from the outside, I guess, but indoors, it's just large floors with escalators between them, betwixt.
And it's like a gallery, but kind of a gallery. It has yet to really present its purpose.
So I found it. I did not go to Freeze last year. I found this year to be pretty disappointing in terms of the charmlessness of the experience. They had most of the main galleries were on one floor. The other ones kind of got less buzzy, maybe you could say, as you ascended the escalators. And at the top, there was like their sort of corporate sponsor suite where they were selling, $18 tequilas, sodas, and giving away Barbara Strum mini facial moisturizers. It did not have the vibes, if you will, the aura of when it was on Roosevelt Island, Randall's Island. I mean, New York City is Julius Randall's Island, but specifically Randall's Island, where you would take a boat there, and it was a hassle to arrive, so you'd hang out longer. There was an outdoor area where you could eat Roberta's pizza and drink a little wine, and then you would sort of socialize, then ride the boat back, and it just was a fun spring activity, and this did not have that feel.
It bears mentioning that things like Freeze or TFOF or The Independent are companies that make money off of people who come in and pay ticketed experiences and food, and after the pandemic, I think the art market world kind of simplified itself, and it is about selling big money artworks to collectors now. Like, I was at an opening during all this kerfuffle, and one of my friends, who is not a regular in this kind of thing, was like, should I be going to more? Am I missing something? Why aren't there beers here? How come it's not that full? How come it's not that fun? And I'm like, because you're not buying anything. This whole show is sold out, right? Like, you getting drunk here does not help this place anymore. And I think like this friend of mine, we used to go to Deitch Project's parties, block parties on Grand Street, and it was an event. Jeffrey Deitch is kind of a genius in that regard. Like, he made it more, and he brought other people into it. And I'm like, that doesn't really exist anymore, because the real money is just like flipping these paintings for shocking amounts of money. And so somewhere like Freeze, that has an event at a place as drab as the Shed, sadly they don't care about me or you. They don't care about the artists coming through and politicking and being jealous and having a lot of schadenfreude. They don't care about that. They don't care about you, someone who wants to see something awesome and have like a cool experience. They just want to flip paintings.
I mean, this totally checks out with the way that Freeze has evolved, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. Their grim, dark future.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Hold on. But I was going to say, one sec. But like, Freeze costs $200 for admission if you want to go on Thursday.
Wait,
200.
Is
206.
Is that a press preview? That shouldn't be that much. Is that like early access?
That's the first day. It was a Thursday first preview, 206. If you wanted to go Friday and get there early, it was $160, and if you wanted to go over the weekend, it was $92.
That's a fuck you amount of money, because nobody who goes there, who buys things, pays for it, right? This is like the club trick. The people they want there are not paying, so they're just, and they don't care about us, so they're just kind of like, yo, if you want to give us $200, we're not stopping you.
Yeah, because I've never paid for Freeze ever. And I don't mean that, and I'm not even in the art world. It's just, if you know somebody, they'll figure it out.
There's a basketball art underground, as many people can figure out.
The word I used was grimdark.
Mm-hmm. Phrase, what does that mean?
Well, the opposite of that would be hope punk. So these are two sides of the same coin. And
sounds a lot of like marketing done in a room. Can you explain these crazy terms?
Well, my understanding is that they come from, sci-fi, like, maybe anime, gaming. I don't know. These are not realms that I am particularly attuned to. But I think those phrases are interesting because they present two visions of the future. Like, one would be the grimdark dystopian Blade Runner dreary future, and then hope punk is the idea that actually things are going to be great, that we're going to solve all our problems, and that we will live as poets and flying planes blissfully.
All just hopped up on Ozempic. I hear you.
How was your Ozempic journey going?
Pretty good. I grew 3 feet. Oh, that's a different thing. So I had hit a growth spurt in my late life, and I'm no longer addicted to hoarding jars of marinara sauce. No longer on Twitter talking about Julius Randle. Like, this magic injection, man, I am chill AF. Like, I am not Jimmy Butler. There are no dogs here anymore, man.
Yeah, I saw that the reports that Ozempic might be the miracle drug, that the same whatever inhibitors, if you will, that lead people to stop overeating and has a similar effect on other character traits, that you could stop
Caffeine,
biting your
OCD.
nails,
Yep.
or you would drink significantly less. You would basically lose those urges that you have with addictive personalities to, I guess, would give you more willpower, or maybe even a disinterest in those kind of activities.
I mean, this goes back to a really annoying but long debate we've been having. Like, when you diagnose a young person with like a learning disability or autism, it is something we created, and it is a wide spectrum. Like, I think a kid who's diagnosed with autism could be many things. And a lot of those things are what makes people cool, right? Like, I know I'm cool because I have a penchant for collectibles and comic books and baseball cards. Like, that's why I walk down the street and you're like, that guy's so cool. He's bidding on this Terry Eason rookie card on eBay. But like, if we squash these things, like, we're just erasing kind of a personality trait that I find to be sometimes very lovable.
Well, I was going to say, is this just like refinement?
Is this the Bondi Bluism of personality?
To say, okay, all those things that make you weird, why don't we just zone those out? Why don't we just bring you down to, how about you don't eat or drink or chew your nails, or you just focus on your work. Just, you don't need to tweet anymore. You don't need to put up your comments about Brumdog. just live. Just be in your yeah, does it turn you into a loser?
Well, I always think like we've found the language to talk about someone who's a troll, or someone who's like hateful online, or even in person, someone who's toxic, right? Like, we have all these words now, controlling. But I'd just be so disappointed if I rolled up to you and you'd be like, and if I said like Doc Rivers, you'd be like, it's fine, it's cool. I'd be like, okay. I'm like, that guy sucks. Like, I don't want to drink seven beers with this guy.
Yeah, I don't think Ozempic is going to change society into a bunch of automatons. But also, is that what we're talking about here across the board, right? We're talking about art. We're talking about science. And I don't know, there was this article in New York Magazine about people's vision of the future, and their version of hope punk. It was, everyone kind of universally wanted the brownstone in Brooklyn with a Noguchi lamp and this sort of vision of bourgeoisie wealth in New York City. No one wanted to even live in Manhattan. It was this sort of suburban / urban idealization of an adult existence in New York City. Isn't that kind of what we're talking about here with whether it's Freeze or Ozempic, like this streamlining of the future?
There are screaming people talking about basketball on our TV who hate efficiency, who hate that we're talking about efficiency. And like, I think human beings immediately start gamifying everything and trying to find the quickest, fastest way. Like, if I told you, yo, retirement's going to be really tricky unless you do a few of these things with your savings that might help you when you're 70, you would probably be like, well, what are the best things I can do? And someone might be like, well, that's boring, right? Like, you're just thinking about tricking something or optimizing something, to use those terms. And like, to come back to the art market couple weeks we've been having, it has occurred to me that like many of these wealthy people are on Ozempic and they're not snatching up. It's been a very up and down, perhaps muted.
Hold on, I like this theory.
Oh yeah,
Let's
Yeah.
hear this.
because Ozempic is rampant in wealthy circles, and wealthy circles are the ones purchasing paintings for 400K, going to Phillips, going to Christie's auction sales, and those sales have been good at times, but a little overall disappointing. And people claim it's about the bank crisis. People claim it's perhaps about interest rates.
But you know the truth.
Ozempic, it's like, you guys look amazing and aren't spending any money. You guys don't even want green mango cocktail martinis right now. Like, what's going on? There's no line for the big face tea. And that was my like little funny joke in my head. I was like, well, if they squash their addictive tendencies, then they're not going to snatch up all these artworks in a frenzy on the opening night. They're like, everyone's a bit more measured here. And it just takes 5 influential people to do this, and then it's a trickle-down effect with everybody being like, hold up, we're not really spending money right now. Everyone just like, take your time. And obviously there was that scandal with Lisa Schiff, the art advisor, very powerful art advisor. She's been running one of my favorite schemes, man. It's the Ponzi Wells scheme, where I take your money, live off of it, and never pay you back. You heard about this.
The Ponzi Wells.
Yeah, he's amazing. He was the first mutant Ninja Turtle to take the league by storm, and possibly, well, respects to Carmelo Anthony, but that's coming later.
Yeah, I mean, out of all the Ninja Turtles, I think the
Got
most
Jason
faithful
Terry. Yeah.
to the cartoon was, in fact, Ponzi Wells. Mm-hmm. Like, there were some other ones out there, like Al Harrington. There were some Donatellos, some Michelangelos, but
Zebo.
Zebo for sure. But Ponzi Wells was the icon.
Really got slandered. It's weird how they named that hustle after him. Like, not great for his brand.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ben Ponzi.
Yeah.
Are you related to the schemers? No, absolutely not. No, it's a totally different Ponzi family that's involved with that.
Yo, let me get $20. Like, wait. Is this? Are you Ponzi Wells? Why would I ever do that? It's like, ooh.
I mean, it literally was Charles Ponzi, who to be honest, that seems unfair. Like, you're gonna taint generations of the good name of the Ponzi family because
No, they just
he
changed
pulled
their
off
name to Bonzi
scheme?
with a B.
This was in 1920. Charles Ponzi was an Italian businessman. This is anti-Italian sentiment, also.
Oh my God, there's a lot of there's Julia Fox debate about anti-Italian sentiment, or maybe just bringing that into a debate that has no room for it. But that's another thing. I kind of wanted to call out the Lynn Goldsmith Supreme Court case, based off of your futuristic point of view with the arts. Like, did you hear about this? Like, Lynn Goldsmith is the photographer who took a picture of Prince, and Andy Warhol took this picture, filtered it through the means of silkscreening, and made one of his iconic silkscreen prints, colored the face purple, the background's red. It's been kind of Xeroxed looking. And she won a case last week saying that she had creative authorship over it, and there was not enough artistic change to transform, they use the word transformative, to make it a new artwork. And dissenting Supreme Court judges, to our discussion a second ago, were like, this is a worse world, the fact that this happened. Like, we're going to be robbed of good ideas. You do not want everything to be Bondi Blue. You do not want everything to be hokified. Like, it needs to be weird. And if we suppress, Ozempify everything, then we're looking at like an uphill battle.
This reminds me of this essay I wrote, or I guess an opinion piece. It was pretty informative. I'll try to remember what the link was. But it was someone who was talking about kind of the future of streaming media and how Netflix or Time Warner, how studios who used to create movies, also being the main distributor and also the now platform for their broadcast, is inherently going to screw the industry. Where before, if you had a like little indie movie that people went out and saw in theaters, there was this like tactile measurement of it being successful. That it got word of mouth, it grew, people went and spent their money, and you knew it. Like, they spent their money, these are the receipts, people went, this is a hit, and we can make movies like that and they will succeed. And their non-optimistic view of the future of filmmaking was that it's just going to be dictated by like algorithms, and that there isn't really a metric other than what people happen to click on. I don't know if this is true or not, but I thought it was an interesting, an insightful way of looking at the way that streaming has affected the movie industry. And it also kind of echoes things that like Martin Scorsese has said about everything being superheroes and everything being Marvel. So I
believe Michelle Rodriguez came out recently and was like, yo, I'm so tired of these Marvel movies. And someone was like, yo, there's been 10 Fast and Furious movies, of which you are a main character of. But someone quickly did the math, and it's like, well, in that time, I believe, I think I have these numbers wrong, but there were like 41 Marvel-related movies in the time they made 10 Fast and Furious movies. Like, it's overwhelming.
What's crazy about it is there will be a viral tweet, and it'll say like, when you knew that this franchise was cooked, or this moment when you knew you like loved this movie. And I was just kind of scrolling through it and realized that I didn't know any of these scenes, and I hadn't seen any of them. I was like, what? This is bizarre. Yeah. This is about movies. And I just was going through it. I'm like, I don't know who these characters are. I don't know what this scene is, because there were so many ones about superhero movies, and I don't watch monster movies.
I mean, the movies are not a natural resource like air or water. I don't think the movies should be for everybody, and therefore less people more than ever. Like, if you don't like Marvel movies or Oppenheimer, you're kind of shit out of luck. And it's like, where are my movies? Like, a lot of Republicans have this. Like, everything's so woke. Where are the movies where I get to see some dude mowing down other dudes with a gun? I want more of those. It's like, well, the movies is not a natural thing that every human enjoys. It's created, and it's just not for you. Sort of like basketball. It's like, why can't I get the kind of basketball I remember as a kid, and Bob Cousy dribbling with his left hand looking at the ground, and it does not belong to humanity. It is the vision of a few people.
Yeah, I think, speaking of that, the genre of movie that I am personally really over is like the violent revenge movie.
You mean like
I like a lot of them, but just I don't know, the one where someone has been
Wick.
like sort of that, but I mean that's
They
more
killed
like
his dog.
But that's more almost like this like world building with like spies and all this kind of shit. I don't know, the one where it's like some criminal enterprise or group of ruffians has wronged someone, like beat them up on the street or hurt their loved ones, and then they just go and get revenge because the system won't. Like the vigilante Avenger movie has really kind of run its course for me. That said, this movie Sisu, I'm going to watch it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's talk about it. I'll try to watch it too. Let's talk about it then. But to your point, the Celtics are down 0-3, man. Is this Four Brothers erasure? You're taking down a Wahlberg in the same week the Celtics go down 0-3? Like, Four Brothers, I can never remember the fourth. That was a classic film, man. Yo, if the authorities aren't going to take justice, this is the Wild West. We're going to avenge our stepmother.
Well,
adopted mother.
Yeah, I mean, you had legends. You had Mark Wahlberg, Tyrese Gibson, Andre Benjamin, and Garrett Hedlund, the other guy who
Friday
wasn't
Night
a
Lights.
musician.
Yeah. So you hate westerns. You don't like vigilantism.
I've always liked those movies. I'm just very sick of them, and I don't know if this dovetails with what's been happening in America, where everyone's just like, oh, vigilantism, that's the way to do things. Someone pulled up my driveway and I shot him in the head for pulling up in my driveway. They rang my doorbell. I decided to shoot him. I'm like, is this where all the guns and vigilante films are headed? Just shooting people in your driveway?
Weren't you singing the praises of Sicario 2 over Succession not too long ago?
Day of the Soldado?
Yeah. Yo, I tried to watch it again after you mentioned it. It is unwatchable, man.
Look, I'm not saying there aren't masterpieces of the genre that will outlive my weariness. I just don't need to see more Liam Neeson.
Right. I know. There's unlimited. Now it just feels like another one pops up. But that origin story is so crazy, man. Like, obviously everyone knows this, but a classically trained actor, his wife dies tragically. He goes through a depression and feels like the only way to empower himself is to do these kinds of movies. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy, man. Anyway.
Did he have some wild-ass quotes about, like, how he was, like, roaming around, like, looking to inflict violence in real life?
It sounds about right. I mean, I believe his wife, Jolene Richardson, I mean, I may have the wrong Richardson, but she died in a skiing accident, perhaps? I think the Sonny Bono fate. I don't want to Google this, but I believe that's what happened.
Yeah, here you go. He said he walked the streets with a weapon for a week, hoping to take out his anger after someone close to him was raped by a black man.
Jesus Christ, I did not know about that. Is this after his wife's death?
I believe so. This was from like 2019. Wasn't that long ago.
He
said, "I'm not a racist." He said, "I'm not a racist. I just wanted to kill a black person with a weapon."
Not good. None of this is good. I hate all of it. It's also interesting to veer off this quickly. He popularized Release the Kraken, right? He said that. Which ends up spawning like a ton of alcohol stuff and an NHL team.
A man with a complicated legacy.
Yo, Liam Neeson has made his mark, sort of like Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah, the whole vigilante on and off the court thing with Liam Neeson.
I mean, crazy. I know what you mean about movies, but as with TV and movies, it's just sadly, and music, sadly, it's not for everybody, and it is for less and less people as we move forward. And we joke about this idea of streamlining everything and the disappearing of subcultures, but it's happening. And when Andy Warhol, after being dead for a zillion years, is found to be a plagiarizer in 2023, like, we're doing a thing.
Can you explain to our good listeners who are highly informed, but just in case they miss on this, can you just explain the Lynn Goldsmith Supreme Court case?
I thought I did a second ago, but let me make it more succinct. She took a photograph. She's in the Warhol generation. She took these photographs. Her whole business is suing people who kind of appropriate her work, and they, through technology, through silk screening, Photoshop, all these different processes, artists have been transforming existing work for a long time. Shout out to Robert Rauschenberg, who is, I think, underappreciated, but is one of the great thinkers and artists of American history. And, Warhol was a genius in many ways, and that's a whole different conversation. I love the conversation over a couple brew dogs about how I think he's held New York City hostage for the last 2 generations, but we can do that some other time. But he was brilliant in the way that he took images and transformed them to the viewer, where it no longer seemed like it belonged to a source or an origin. He kind of, for the lack of a better overarching umbrella word, is like pop art introduced a kind of aesthetic to a larger audience that was extremely difficult to pull off. And it harkened to it signaled advertising, movies, celebrity, all these things that we know how to talk about now, fame. And these are all huge ideas. And Lynn Goldsmith did not have these specific ideas. She took a wonderful photo of Prince. And Warhol was just like, hey, I want you to think about your life. I want you to think about modern art. I want you to think about the history of the world, whatever. If, this is why we're not doing Renaissance paintings anymore or making Notre Dame's. Like, we have evolved as brains. And Lynn Goldsmith came out and she kept on saying, like, this is mine. You are not allowed to take what's mine and make it yours. And the Supreme Court judged her in her favor this week, which I thought was an incorrect judgment. But when you put a bunch of Clarence Thomases up there to think about this weird nebulous stuff, you're going to get a really plain, like, travel truther reaction.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of the issues that the government has had with trying to rein in technology or even understand it, and also how it applies to art, is that they aren't appreciators of art, especially in America. Mm-hmm. They aren't people who understand technology. There was a New York Mag story about some of the anti-trans and anti-gay legislation, I want to say in Nebraska, and they spoke with one of the Republicans who had voted for that bill, and she was like, well, I don't really watch the news. Is there something I should be aware of? Like,
oh
she's like, ooh, she was like, I don't think we even should have introduced that. Huh. Like, just admitted to she was curious why there was a writer from New York in Nebraska, and was like, what's up? Is there something going on that I should know about, because I don't follow the news?
Right.
It's like you're asking these kind of people to judge the merits of artwork. Like, that's insane.
I hate it, but also maybe I'm at this end of the kind of punk you're talking. What is it called? Optimist punk?
Hope punk.
Hope punk. Maybe I'm a hope punk, because I think while Andy Warhol would have been pleased if he dominated the earth posthumously as, like, the guy, the Nanette of his thought. He ended everything. Like, we are paralyzed by his genius, and we are too consumed by his thoughts that we cannot create anything new anymore. But I don't think that happened, and by ruling against him, my hope punk take is good, because there's still danger out there. There's still dangerous ideas. And you may say, like, well, he's just changing an image that exists. Like, I can Xerox something 5 times. And I'm like, do it. You're going to get sued. Like, that's what we know now. And I think adding a bit of danger in a world that is Ozempified is not necessarily the worst outcome.
And also, in the same way that Doc Rivers occasionally makes the right decision.
A broken dock is right twice a day.
Yeah. Like, the court's not always going to get it wrong.
That's right. That's right.
Broken dock.
Hey, man, he's made a great legacy out of it.
We're going to talk definitely more about the broken dock.
But before we talk about broken dock, I still want to stay with this kind of artsy introduction to this perfect pod. But yo, what's up with these weed stores, man?
Yeah, I saw an interesting tweet from Dean Kissick, who I think we mentioned last week as well. He's really putting his footprint here on the
he's the best, man,
pod lately. He had a tweet talking about the weed stores that have cropped up on like 2 per block in New York City. I don't know how they are elsewhere, but I mean, around where I live, I would say there are
air quotes weed stores.
Right, there are like 5 of them within a 5-block radius of my house. If you go along places like Bedford and Williamsburg or Delancey, East Village, they are rampant. So what Dean said was, there's so much to be said and to be written about the diversity and invention of New York weed shop aesthetics. As an entirely new medium, quote, weed shop, it hasn't yet succumbed to refinement culture.
I love that idea. And with
How would you describe to people who are unfamiliar with
So
the New
sick.
York weed shop what they look like?
so sick, like check out my camera, my picture reel on my camera. Yo, I always stop and take photos of these. There's like, it's the, you know that character, I think his name is Towley in South Park, that like super like drugged out towel with the like the bloodshot eyes and all that. It is that aesthetic. It is mixed in with like the homies. Remember those little homies you can buy from vending machines for like 25 cents? It is a cartoon hip hop South Park aesthetic. So it is colorful. It is kind of geared towards kids, to be honest, or grown kids. It is a lot of graffiti, street culture nods, and it is awesome. There's some good jokes. There's plays on words. Some weed shops create little mascots and characters for themselves. It usually involves them being high. It is charming as fuck.
Yeah, I think you nailed a lot of the key ingredients to the weed store. Neon, it's a big one. They really are into neon.
Ground effects.
Usually
Yeah.
and they'll have some like violet lights. And a lot of times the neon will say a quote from a rap song. Maybe something from Snoop.
Yeah,
I saw one that had a quote from Joey Badass. Like,
I love it. I love it.
I was like, go off.
Do it for
Someone's
the
like,
culture. Yeah.
a Joey Badass neon sign. Like, that exists.
Yeah,
Lovely.
it's sick. And it's just like, we could talk about the economics some other time. I think it's short leases. It is kind of what coffee shops used to be. They're getting deals on very short leases with a low overhead, and they're going to be out soon, and the neighborhood will have changed as a result of it. But the culture of these things is wonderful, and it's definitely ours. It's like the baggy acid culture. And to Dean's quote, and with all due respect to the god Dean Kissick, I feel like this is the streamlining, kind of softening. This aesthetic has already gone through its filters to the point where like graphic designers have gotten to it. People with Adobe software have gotten to it. Weed culture did not have much of this. I mean, a lot of the acid stuff visually was incredible in the 90s and aughts. But
the aesthetic is very 90s. It's super loud and neon and splashy.
But
or maybe it's early
refined.
2000s.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I'm not sure if it's been refined or if it's been somewhat distilled. Because if you look at the aesthetics for a drugstore, which is what Despot and Ben Solomon and some friends of the pod are working on, that is a little more refinement culture. It's like a clean logo. It's got a catchy name that's not like Cookies Zaza Runties.
Right.
And it's a drugstore. It's got a simplistic logo. They're going to sell a lot of merch, and that to me is a little more refinement culture than these ones that have neon and, as you said, ground effects.
Right.
That feels a little like, I don't know, like the cover of a Jungle mixtape.
Or just like a dumbass spring break party, Mardi Gras.
Yep.
Right? Because the jungle mixtapes you're talking about were like subcultures and kind of weird and dangerous. No longer. This is just Arbitha or Ibiza, And
Well, yeah, it's more Bourbon Street.
yeah. This is like the dumb version. And when I'm thinking about and talking about like the original weed culture, obviously the 60s, but by the time we get to the stuff I remember in my lifetime, like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, The Chronic, like that's a language that doesn't quite work now. Like none of these weed shops look like that. That still seems like something illegal, which it was. Now it just reads as not illegal. It reads as kid friendly. You are not going to get in trouble. This is a party. Hey, if we were gonna get busted, why would we announce ourselves, right?
Well, my understanding is that there's only 4 places
Yeah.
to actually buy legal weed.
Housing Works.
Right, there's Housing Works,
Shout out to Housing Works.
Smacked Village,
Yeah, yeah.
which is on
Amazing.
Bleecker Street.
Amazing. Yeah. See.
Just Breathe in Binghamton, New York. Shout out to Bingo, home of the Speedy.
What's a
And
speedy?
hold on, and Union Square Travel Agency, a cannabis store. That's it. As of a couple months ago, those are the only 4 places. Now, as to your query about Speedies, I feel
Point
like
guard
we
for the
talked about him.
Sixers, right?
I think we talked about him one time.
Speedy Claxton, he's pretty good.
Very, very quickly, they are not on the level of the garbage plate at all. Which is, of course, of course, infamous, or buffalo wings, or beef and weck, which is another buffalo specialty. It is another upstate delicacy. And Speedies are basically chicken marinated in, I don't know if it's like some kind of Italian dressing. And then you wrap them in foil and you put them on the grill. It's basically a shish kebab without a skewer, for the most part. And then you put them in sandwiches, and they're pretty tasty. It's kind of like, yeah, I guess shish kebab would be the closest comparison. But they are only really sold in Binghamton. That's it. And if you drive through Binghamton, you can stop. There's a couple places that have fairly good Speedies. They're not incredible, but if you got to eat in Binghamton, you might as well do that instead of going to Applebee's or whatever.
Middle
Anyway.
Eastern cuisine filtered through Binghamton? That's amazing. The best of both worlds.
It truly is. So anyway, that's your lesson on Speedies. If you're
love it.
driving upstate and going through Binghamton, tell them Cookies Hoop sent you.
This is a Binghamton shish kebab. Like, I get it. Yeah, say no more.
Anyway, you can also go to their weed store while you're up there. They go incredible together, I guess.
So,
Speedies and legal weed.
Dumb question. The 4 places in New York can sell weed. What are all these other shops selling?
Yeah, so it was explained to me by someone who really likes weed that those places are either in this spongy gray area
Now
where
you
they
chill,
are,
Kevin Durant.
where they're not really supposed to be selling weed, but they are.
Yeah, there's one around the corner. You can buy weed.
And then the other ones, or at least the same places, are selling edibles that don't have THC, that they are
right.
chemical compounds that replicate THC, but you don't really know what they are. So if you want actual THC, a lot of those places are selling stuff that does not include any at all. But they also sell real weed.
Yeah.
I mean, I was walking down Delancey like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I was with a former Cookies guest, Sean Thor Conroe, and he said,
Buck Boy, the name of his
Yeah,
book. Everyone pick it up.
"Yeah." I was like, "What are you saying about him?" No. Yes, that is his book. Yeah, cop that. But we were walking down Delancey, and he made some remark about the moon, and there was eclipse, and the energy was going to be weird. And I was like, "Okay, all right, I'm picking up what you're laying down." And within like a minute of him saying that, we saw these 2 kids tear out of a weed store on Delancey with holding a big plastic garbage bag, and they go like sprinting by us. They were bucking, my friend. They were sprinting, and they go tearing by us and go around the corner. And then a second later, 2 guys come running out of the weed store and like cartoonishly look their heads swiveling down the street, like, where'd they go? And I was like,
Oh my god, I love it.
I was like, those guys just made off with like a whole bag of weed.
Either that or like a bunch of fireball shots, some dick juice. The classic convenience store stuff.
They stole all of our peanut M&Ms and
Yeah.
and Big Red gum.
Yeah. And Street Fighter boner medicine.
Oh, those kids are gonna have erections for weeks.
Those damn kids. Be safe out there.
And then after that, we went to a downtown bar, and then a big fight broke out between the bouncer and people out there. So I'm like, Sean, he sensed the energy. He called it.
Oh wait, was this before I met you? That brawl that happened at the bar you came from?
Yes.
All right. I was like, it sounds like you're having fun. Wait a second, I was around that night. That sounds fun.
You were there. You just
Have you been
just-
having fun without me?
Never.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one. My hope punk isn't crime. It isn't people stealing stuff from like business people, but like a little bit of this kind of stuff. Like, you were on the craziest in the craziest area of New York City, which is Delancey McDonald's. So like, I can't draw that many conclusions off your experience there because that is a
true.
Bermuda Triangle of vibes.
That is a vortex.
Yeah, man. Woo.
You've seen the video of the guy with a hatchet in there, right? That's a good one.
Insane. Like real fear. And everyone just like looking around, taking photos. You know nothing's gonna, to our point, you know nothing's gonna happen, but if it does, damn, like.
It's like, is this man really going to hack people up with a hatchet in the Delancey McDonald's?
Yeah.
The answer was no. He just broke some glass. You know, he made a little scene.
It's like
That ruffian.
It's like when you're rushing across the street and a car is bearing down on you, you're like, the car just has to not hit me and I'm fine. So I feel okay. But there's maniacs out there and this car could indeed hit me. Like, all he has to do is swing the wrong direction and someone's getting hacked, right? But he was very measured. He took to a glass partition. He took to a wall. He took to a table. Like, it is easy to kill somebody. And he did not.
He didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
He's a peaceful vigilante.
To all the people who know the video we're talking about and don't live near Delancey McDonald's, it is as crazy as that video sounds. I used to live a block away for 20 years. Very normal behavior there.
Speaking of restaurants with abnormal behavior,
Or normal. I don't know.
I'm thinking abnormal. I'm not sure, not to kink shame or anything, but there was a story in L.A. Times about the restaurant Horses, and
They better not be cooking up horse meat. I don't. That doesn't fly with me.
I remember when a little restaurant in Queens said they were going to start selling horse meat. People got really mad and they didn't do it.
The U.S. exports a lot of that stuff to other countries for profit.
I mean, these were French Canadians. That's a thing. They eat horse.
Yeah, it's a thing.
But we're talking about a restaurant called Horses in LA. It was very popular. I've never been, but it was supposedly a real scene. I'd heard about it
Celebrities.
many times before this happened because it's so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And the story talked about the information that came to light during divorce proceedings. Now, I'm no legal expert, Andrew.
No,
I don't know if these are. No, I'm not. Seems as if I am.
That's right.
As litigious as I am.
Right.
But I don't know if this is all stuff that was said under oath, so it's true, or these are allegations. But the gist of it was that one of the chefs, I believe an owner, but anyway, one of the chefs was killing cats.
Can we back up a little bit and like bring this
No.
to Twitter?
No, we're going there.
I know, but
something.
the origin, you're skipping over the kind of how this went viral before the article.
No, I know. That's what I'm getting to. Hold on. Give me 1 second, Andrew. I got this.
Do your thing.
Okay. No, so I'm saying that was the story. I did do it in reverse. But the information that was coming out on Twitter before this was far more scandalous. So I'm just trying to cover our legal grounds here, Andrew. That's what I'm doing here because I'm so
Oh,
litigious. I'm saying the story that
Sam
ran in the
Waterston
LA
over
Times
here.
was about the abuse of animals in the context of a divorce court trial, whatever. The information on Twitter, which we are now going to talk about, was insane. It was insane.
Our boy Foster Kamer, who is a good reporter, fan of great music, jumps on Twitter. He's like, yo, guys, you've heard about all this weird shit in the food industry. A story's about to drop that is going to blow your mind. And he's on Twitter just being like, you guys are not ready for this story. It is the most insane thing you've ever heard. Someone please report this or I'm going to lose it. And he just continues like this for like a day or so, and everyone kind of joins in and was just like, yo, I heard about it, this is crazy. And I'm like, about what? So there was like actual suspense on Twitter about what the hell this story was. And as responsible journalists, everyone's just like, we can't say because it's this crazy. Someone has to break this as an actually like fact-checked piece, not just some hearsay on Twitter. And our friend Caitlin Phillips just drops that bomb, being like, maybe just, with no kind of information, like the one of the co-owners is in a complicated relationship with stray cats that they take in, private human stuff, and
this is the worst description.
Well, I don't want to
of what she said. Just say it, dude.
You say it.
Fine. Caitlin tweeted, "The chef jerks off while he kills guys or kittens."
Wait, say that again. Kills what?
The chef jerks off while he kills guys or kittens.
Right.
So she was just getting information.
Right.
But that was what she heard, and that was what everyone then heard, was that your really delicate way of describing the chef allegedly was killing stray cats as like a erotic device.
Like, and I was delicate because this is like a divorce proceeding, and these people are probably angry at each other, and it just doesn't feel good saying this about someone else.
But that also wasn't in the LA Times story. That was why I kind of reversed these things, because that wasn't mentioned, that he was like jerking off while killing kittens. Look, not to kink shame, but he sounds like a jerk.
Ew. But Foster comes out after this LA Times piece was published, and he was like, this is not the whole story. This is just like to cover their own base. Why do New York journalists have to do the work for LA journalists? And it started a whole New York LA debate, which is hilarious too. But he was just like, report the whole story, guys, because now he's invested. Now he's like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm flabbergasted at just this. Like there's more to this.
Well, right. Because I think what happened was people started talking about the story on the internet, and it was Foster and people in New York media.
Yeah.
And look, I asked people who know what was going on
Spill the
about
beans.
this, and they, as soon as this rumor was going around, and they told me a larger part of this story and other stuff that I'm not even going to mention because that would be like scandalous.
Don't Lindy Goldsmith us, right?
Right, but to your point, I think the LA Times just tried to get the story out because that people were talking about it, and they were worried that someone was going to scoop them. So they dropped kind of like a halfway reported story that didn't include all those sordid details that I think Foster was talking about, or Caitlin was talking about, or anyone was talking about, which is the jerking off while strangling kittens element.
And I can't remember if it was the LA Times article that mentioned this, but they were famous for like being good Samaritans and adopting stray cats a lot. But those cats would die. But stray cats are like, they're riddled with issues, and that it didn't seem abnormal for them to be like, well, one died, but we took another two in. Crazy story. As a cat lover myself, I am appalled.
Yeah, I mean, you've basically created an entire livelihood out of being an admirer of cats.
I've had the same 2 stray cats for 10 years, so don't even try.
I'm not saying what you do with the cats in the privacy of your own home. That's your business, Andrew.
My cats are chillers. They are not anything more than they have to be. But yeah, is this story over? Like, are we going to get more to it? Like, you can't even adapt this to a TV show. It's that crazy. Like, this just doesn't fly. There was that cat documentary on Netflix that ends up being about cyber crimes and other things. It kind of reveals itself in different ways. But, I feel like every story has the potential to be a 20-part miniseries, and this one you just cannot touch, right? Or is it season 2 of The Bear?
Yeah, it's a little risque. I think you'd want to avoid the kind of content that makes people say jerking off while strangling a kitten.
I hate it. This is like the third time you've said it.
And I know how much it bothers you as someone who is a meme artist that involves cats. And like, I'm just gonna, like, someone has to be brave enough to say the words.
Do you have that dog in you to talk about these cats?
You know what? I'm also, I think I'm done.
yeah. That's enough for me.
Had my fill. I'm fully satiated.
Like, does this fly on Blue Sky better than it does on Twitter? Is it just like willy-nilly on Blue Sky? People are just saying these words just off the top of their head?
Have you been on Blue Sky? I have not. I assume from the screen grabs that I've looked at, it is identical to Twitter.
I have not. And people are migrating there because Elon Musk sucks. And Twitter is an awful place.
It's so junky now.
It's always been junky, though. Let's not pretend it was ever good, right? It's still as funny as ever. It's still as bad as ever. There's still annoying people, and there's so great people. It has not changed, in my opinion. But people are jumping ship because we get bored of stuff and we want an excuse to do it. But I don't think it's quite taking over. I don't see many people posting from there or reporting news about horses on there.
Well, I mean, we've talked enough about the decline of Twitter, and I'm with you that I'm not someone who's like, that was so great, this Twitter, and now it sucks. It is noticeably far shittier now, though.
Good people have left, yeah.
Well, not even the people necessarily, just the whole, like, getting rid of verified accounts and then having people pay for placement. It has just made it a far shittier user experience where you scroll through comments and it's just absolute cretins at the top of it. Like, it's kind of stripped it of the call and response that I thought fun viral content would have, right? Where here's your post that is either beloved and people are cracking jokes riffing on it or being dunked on, but now there's this cesspool of idiots where you're seeing like a Twitter Blue user who's just replying with like a sideways rolling laughing face, and that's above like an actual funny comment, and I'm just kind of sick of the scrolling through trash to try to find anything funny. So I think as I said, the call and response element of Twitter that was entertaining is just kind of gone.
Maybe I didn't look through the comments enough, but like I've never been a fan of blue check Twitter, so giving that a little bit of chaos was fine to me. Twitter is not like the.
Well, I just mean it was more of a meritocracy before, at least is what it felt like, where maybe people you followed, their replies would be higher up because. Oh,
I don't even care. Yeah.
But I just mean, like, you just go to any like popular tweet and it's just absolute garbage beneath it now.
Yeah, I can't say it was much better 7 years ago though. That was like the garbage heyday. It's always been garbage. Like, Twitter is garbage. Like, it is something that is clearly worth saving because we all like it, but also clearly easy to abandon. And I don't want to think of the last 20 years trying to preserve the usefulness, the clear usefulness of Twitter, especially if you're in the media. I like all this stuff, but like, it's okay to let this go. And Blue Sky just seems like a facsimile of something we've already hated. So migrating there to preserve our brand and maybe livelihood and our business makes sense, but I don't think there's enough of us to do that. Did you hear that Google's about to drop theirs, which Blue Sky will eliminate Blue Sky completely?
Oh, I didn't even know there was another rival, but why wouldn't there be?
Yeah, exactly. It's not it's not outlandish, and people who have Gmail or Google accounts can just migrate all their information and their friends and hit the ground running on Google's social media form. But I'm sure Elon Musk is really worried about that, because that actually is a threat to Twitter, I think. But Google is like no better than Elon Musk, or all these things are the same.
Yeah. I mean, Musk just becoming this repulsive figure that is also unescapable on Twitter is made the its utility decline as well. Not only from like an actual functional standpoint, but just I'm way too aware of things that Elon Musk is thinking or saying, and that's not the life I want to lead.
I've blocked him and his words.
Same, and I still know when he says things. I'm with you.
Yeah, and Twitter is useful. Like, I love it. Me and you go on Twitter and like talk about stuff I enjoy, man. It is cool. And I love the people I've met on there. It is not something I want to burn down, but also like it's fundamentally lame, right? Like, I don't want to gatekeep
I'm here
lives.
for it being burned down. I like that idea.
Yeah, let's just like leave it. We're free. We're the Simpsons kids that like rub their eyes and go outside. Touch some grass, Twitter users. But like,
This was a point that you made. Sorry to interrupt, because I thought you made a great point, though, is that we're looking for a replacement for something that we acknowledge is toxic and shitty and makes our daily existence more miserable. Like, how can we get another version of that?
Yeah. Yeah, and the hope punks will come out and immediately say what I just said, right? Like, but there are valuable things on there, and it's important for independent business people, and I do a lot of my world building through my network on these social media sites. Totally. But you gotta let that shit burn sometimes.
I know. I'm just thinking like, Genie, you're free. Like, thank you, and then just diving into another bottle.
I know, but like, think about all the like Shark Tank ass people who are like, I sold 1 million sponges off of a Twitter ad. I'm like, that's cool. If people like these sponges, like, I'm into this.
Right. I'm not talking about the fact that we don't need this portal for information, like our kind of personal news ticker and what. Of course, sure. But right, the gleefulness of like, I need to replace this thing with another one that's like identical.
Yeah.
Cool. But let's talk about some other things that we're enjoying, because when we talked last week, we're shifting to basketball, folks. So
you can turn off or turn on depending on who you are.
So Andrew, last week it was a grim time it was grim dark for the Cookies chaps. The Cookies Civil War, which seemed on the horizon, was derailed. It fizzled to a dismal end, and we were feeling pretty glum. I mean, maybe not fully glum.
I don't think so.
But the Knicks lost, the Sixers lost, our enemies were in power. Jimmy Butler and the Celtics. And today, I'm a little bit more hope punk, Andrew.
Go on. Can you elaborate?
Well, where do we want to start? Because for me, it's like a cloud has been lifted, my friend.
Oh, wow.
Doc Rivers set adrift. Although a broken Doc may have been right.
Twice
a day.
Yeah, twice a game.
He is no longer the Sixers' problem.
3 years felt like a lifetime, man. Gotta be honest. People think the process was a 15-year thing. Ooh, I was like, how long has Doc Rivers been Sixers coach? 25 years?
How about that, though? Doc Rivers was in power longer than Sam Hinkie.
Yes.
That's so
crazy.
sad.
That's
so
crazy.
sad. A guy who was very good at his job. Get out of here. Doc, you get 3 years.
Yeah, and to resist turning this portion of the pod into Cookies told you so, but about many things. But like, Doc Rivers' weaknesses, I think, were apparent and observable. And the reason why he still was coach for the third year was reasonable and also observable. And it worked. Joel Embiid was MVP, man. Not to become the Giannis guy, the hope punk here. Giannis, the hope punk king. Like, Joel Embiid is now a legendary player.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week about the relationship between Joe and Doc, and we've been talking about that for at this point years.
Yes,
that Doc was a proxy for Joel Embiid, and that's why Doc alienated Ben Simmons. That's why Doc alienated James Harden, because it created this asymmetrical dynamic in the locker room, where Joe basically had a minion in Doc Rivers who was funneling everything through Joe in terms of touches in the posts, the offensive ideology, the style of play, everything. Without rehashing all of that, there's one thing that I think deserves to be discussed about Doc Rivers here, is that I don't know that Joe understands how Doc was also hampering him. That while Doc funneled everything through Joe, gave him all the touches, he became the scoring champion twice, helped him become MVP, he achieved his dreams, that Doc is the reason that he is getting roasted. That Doc's lineups, Doc's approach are the reason that Harden and Simmons and all these guys have been embarrassed and humiliated at huge moments of their career. Like, I am optimistic about the Sixers because I really believe Doc was the worst coach in the NBA, and that
worst coach of a good team in the NBA.
Sure, maybe the worst coach in the NBA though. Also,
Silas, come on, man. Silas was on cruise control.
Maybe so, but I'm just saying. I think people are underrating the magnitude of getting rid of Doc. And from what I'm hearing, and this has not been something that's been reported to my knowledge, I'm hearing that the Sixers are want D'Antoni. I don't know that he is
72 years old.
That's what I mean. I don't know if he is still someone who wants to be an NBA coach at this stage of his life, being a senior citizen and all. But I heard that was who Philly was trying to reach out to. But they're also going to interview Nick Nurse and probably Coach Bud,
great,
Sam Cassell, Monty Williams, etc.
The three that you mentioned first, I like quite a bit. Nurse, Bud, and obviously the god D'Antoni, even at 72. Sam Cassell, I don't know. This team is too good to have Sam Cassell as coach. Like, let's get someone creative in there who isn't under the cloud of Doc Rivers or the management.
Yeah, I like Cassell as a basketball player, as a personality. I just don't see why you would have someone who's continuing Doc's lineage.
Yeah,
he has been Doc's understudy for half a decade.
Yeah,
I just have no interest whatsoever.
Break the cycle.
Someone who learned from Doc, like, oh yeah, it's Doc's little buddy. Cool.
Right.
No, get all of those guys out of there. Flush them out.
That's a very Nixian move, right? It's like, okay, we're making a change. It's like, cool. Who are we gonna go back to? It's like the old guy, Mills. Like, okay, right. But yeah, I mean, things are looking up for the Sixers. Not to be a hope punk, but like, it's hard to win a championship, and like, it's all in the details. And Doc Rivers was a big detail. So, let's talk about Harden. Do you think he's gonna walk?
Well, so I was going to say this, and this involves James Harden. I think we're being hopeful about the Sixers because they got rid of Doc Rivers. I would say Sixers Nation is very grimdark right now.
Oh.
They're looking at the situation with James Harden saying, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. If he leaves, then how are we going to win a title? If he comes back, we don't want to pay him $50 million a year for the next 4 years. We're screwed. We have no chance. We are absolutely fucked. So maybe let him walk and then do nothing for a year, or trade Embiid. Like, people are really going down this
I've heard the trade
of
Embiid
negativity.
stuff, which is crazy.
Here's where I'm going to be a little bit of a hope punk, Andrew.
No.
I'm going to say this. You have Joel Embiid, who won MVP on your team.
Yeah,
James Harden was spectacular last year. Of course you pay him and bring him back. What the fuck are you talking about?
Run it back.
Get out of here. James Harden was great. I don't care that he got tired by the end of the year. Play him less than. Whatever. He was great.
Get more shooters. Bring everyone back. It's a good team. Do it.
But I'm giving reasons for optimism. And you also have Tyrese Maxey, who is a really talented young scorer. He's fun to watch. He's on a rookie contract. And you got some other role players who are floating around who are various degrees of useful. You know, I think for me, I want to see Daryl Morey do some GMing now, though. Because last offseason, the consensus was that the Sixers needed more toughness, more dogs. I'm like, that was always so transparently silly. Like, they went out and they lost to Miami, scoring under 90 points in the last 2 games. Joe said some bullshit in the press conference about how they weren't tough enough and they needed PJ Tucker. So then they go out and get PJ Tucker and Trez, and they're talking like, ooh, we needed toughness and dogs. 1 year later, they can't crack 90 points a game against Boston. I guess they need more dogs? Like, it's ridiculous. Go out, Daryl, go out there and get some guys who can play basketball, guys who like taking threes, guys who like dunking, guys who can run, guys who can play defense. And, like, the Doc Rivers stain over this organization where he wouldn't play those kind of guys, whether it was Isaiah Joe or Matisse Thybulle, look, that's been lifted. That's all I want to see now. I want to see a front office and a coaching staff who are unified in having an idea of what a team is supposed to look like, of finding the components and playing them, of not letting Tobias Harris on the court, again, as a Philadelphia 76er, and just taking it from there.
And this was a Harden thought, right?
Oh, yeah, I just think you should bring him back. He's great.
Yeah, I think so too, but the threat of him leaving is real, right? So it has to be, as a GM, you have to prepare for that possibility. And from what we're hearing, he's going back to Houston.
I wonder about how valid that rumor is.
Sure.
Only because I think on one hand he's clearly trying to apply pressure on the Sixers, and he wants them to pay a significant amount of money to retain his services. So he's got to make leaving sound like it's a legitimate threat. I also think putting that news story out right after Doc got fired was a way to sort of temper the rumors that he was the reason that Doc got canned.
But
that
if
he was like a coach killer here.
But if he goes to Houston, you'd be like, well, he did it. Like, you wouldn't be like, God damn.
He might go.
Yeah.
I just, like, I would not be mad at him because, like, he should do what he wants.
Yeah.
But I do think that Philly, considering it's Daryl Morey, considering they may bring in like Mike D'Antoni, considering they got rid of Doc Rivers, I do think Philly wants to bring him back.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll see. He plays for one person, as we know it, and sort of the way like certain politicians just talk to one person. He's getting buckets for Lil Baby, so whatever happens in their conversations, we'll never know. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to think. I was thinking about Mark Cuban and how he decided, it's like, yeah, we're going to lose the playoffs and we'll be fine. People will forget about what I just did, like trying to retain my draft pick. And like the Sixers were the laughing stock of the NBA world last week. Rightfully so. God, what a disappointing Game 7. Just as like a fan of good games, like that was not a good game. The laughing stock stuff has switched, whether that be justified or not, right?
Well, yeah, I think this is kind of what I meant about the perspective on the Sixers, was that even myself, after losing that Game 6, which was such a punishing, unforgivable loss, that made everyone lose trust in the team, lose trust in Doc, lose trust in, if you had it, in Joe and Harden, and made them subjects of mockery. The reality is that they really should have won that game, and with a couple of plays the other direction, they do win that game. And then you're talking about this team in a totally different perspective, where you're saying, now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. They're playing against Miami, a team that they have more talent than, even though Miami is obviously balling out. And maybe they go to the finals. And at that point, if you had pulled off that Game 6 win at home, which, again, unforgivable loss, brutal, but everything at that point becomes a good outcome for the season. You advanced long further than you have before. You vanquished your ancient enemies in the Celtics. Maybe you go to the finals. Maybe you win a title. The Sixers were like a couple plays away from that happening. I just don't think people should get too bent out of shape about this season. And look, I think I was feeling that way, and then I kind of looked. I'm like, to your point, whatever, man. Now you're looking at the Celtics are going to be the laughing stock. The worm turns.
Yeah, and haters would say, but we just did this with the Kawhi shot, and the Sixers were going to win a championship then. And we always talk about KD's foot being on the line.
And they should have brought it back.
Yeah,
they didn't bring back Jimmy Butler.
All this stuff is by a hair, and the fates of Giannis Antetokounmpo's perception change with just KD's foot on the line. These are all real things. It can happen again. This is what makes it interesting, right? The disappointing thing with the Celtics series, and I'm disappointed because I wanted good games. I love Jimmy Butler, so that's fun. But there's all this talk about the Celtics being like, what's wrong? They have 2 All-NBA players. They have the number 4 in the MVP voting. This should not look like this. And I'm like, that's not their fault. This is where I'm gonna stand for Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It's not their fault. People are running puff pieces about Jaylen Brown right before the playoffs. Of course he accepts this. He's like, I totally want to do this interview where you make me seem like I'm about to become a fucking superstar.
Will you please just ask me about my sneakers? Just someone.
Oh, it's going to happen
find
now.
out what my belief system is.
But Reggie Miller getting on these quote unquote superstars, or Shaq at the end of the game being like, all this talk about Joe Mazzulla shouldn't affect superstars. Superstars don't need coaching. They know what to do. I'm like, keep on thinking, man. The place you end up are these actual superstars? Tatum, I think, is for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the Celtics nation was really down bad when Philly was up 3-2, and you heard the grumblings about the team, the complaints against Mazzulla. Then they eke out Game 6, wax the Sixers, and everyone's back up yeah, Celtics. And then now they're right back down. And
there's games to play. It's only 0-3 as we record this.
Only 0-3.
I mean, hey, it's not over yet, right?
I mean, sure, technically speaking.
Right.
But the thing that we have said about Boston, the Celtics, always is that Tatum and Brown are good players, but they aren't by the All-NBA math a top 5 and a top 10 player. That's just absurd.
No.
Because and again, this is not their fault, but if you look at what the media and the voters, they gave the Celtics, I want to say
5 awards, right?
5 awards this year. You're like, so this team, the one that we just saw, who should have lost in 6 to Philly, who is getting absolutely smoked by the Heat, they have an All-NBA player on the first team, a second-team All-NBA player, an all-defensive team player,
an all-hustle winner,
the Hustle Award winner, and the 6th man of the year.
Yeah.
Well, this is then the greatest upset in the history of sports.
Well, the strength of the Celtics through the regular season, which we talked about, was that it was well constructed. Their depth was good, even down to Luke Cornett, helpful players everywhere. When you shorten the rotation in the playoffs, that advantage is more complicated. And in the course of this series, we're seeing kind of the Celtics that we saw against the Warriors. There's a lot of talk about the kind of spacing you give Tatum, where he becomes a little jittery and creates more turnovers. And Jaylen Brown also is not known as a dribbler, and he has at least as many turnovers as assists this series. As ball handlers, you don't want that stat. And that's kind of what killed them in the finals last season with Ime Udoka, a coach everyone loves. So Mazzulla is he's not the one dribbling off his foot. If Jaylen Brown has trouble with a double team, then he's a player who has trouble with a double team. It is what it is. It's no longer about bad luck. It's no longer about a coach's point of view. The Knicks ran out of talent. They had no more answers. That sometimes happens in a 7-game series. The Celtics have no more answers. They ran out of talent.
Well, everyone's, mad at Missoula, and it sounds like the song that's being sung, it's about Missoula and his lack of timeouts. Like we hear the same. Yeah. It's the timeouts. The guy can't manage the clock. He never calls a timeout.
Right.
Look, maybe he should call more timeouts, but that's just become the story of Joe.
He
Missoula.
should have, but it doesn't win him that game.
Yeah, right. But I just mean that's Missoula's the subject of so much fury.
Right.
But all these exact same issues with both of these two players happened when Udoka was there.
Yeah, it's the same
in
stuff.
The finals. It's the same stuff.
Yeah.
And, the thing about Tatum is that he is a really mechanical, robotic player. And when he's being guarded by someone like a Tobias Harris, who is, the center vector of mediocrity, he can do his little hezzy tween, step back, open three. Because Tobias is extremely predictable.
Net zero.
And is just like an inert body in front of Tatum, like a practice dummy where he can do his little moves. Okay, this is going to be the crossover to my Euro step. This is going to be a back and forth. This is going to be a pull-up three. He can play as if he is practicing. And I think Joe runs into this issue too. They both work with Drew Hanlon. They're both guys who have a very sort of studied footwork that isn't necessarily always intuitive. And I think that's where we've seen Tatum get into all sorts of trouble, is when he's guarded by guys who are like Butler or guys who are like Wiggins and Draymond Green, that people who get up in his space and don't allow him to get to his like robotic, muscle memory. He doesn't know what to do.
They bait him.
Because he's not actually intuitively trying to score on people. And when people watch Paul George. Like Paul George is like a super intuitive basketball player.
Yeah,
and I think that's a big difference between PG and Tatum, is that Tatum's skills and moves seem very studied and again, as I said, robotic, mechanical, whatever. Paul George isn't like that.
No. And when I talk about spacing, there's videos that are going around that the defense that kind of stifles Tatum is the one that gives him kind of like a 3 or 4 foot irregularity, and his defender will bait him into taking a first step and then close out really fast. And Tatum doesn't necessarily have the handle to improvise there, or he's not looking to improvise. And when Tatum, I'm grateful for Tatum after Game 6 against the Sixers for giving us that nugget of like, humbly, I believe I'm the best player in the world. I'm one of the best players in the world. He's right? Like, he is a top 25, at least, at most a top 10 player in the world, in the best league in the world. I don't think there's an international player that we can name that is better than these guys in the NBA, the good ones. Him getting roasted is totally justifiable. That's what happens. Yes, I like that he put it out there.
You make big statements, or you play poorly, and you're known as a star. You're first team All NBA. You came in 4th in MVP voting. Sure, he is completely entitled to say, humbly, I'm one of the greatest players in the world. That's what people said. I mean, to me, I think he's a very good player. I don't put him in that category of absolute superstars, but he can obviously say that, and then people can obviously roast him when he puts up a goose egg. So whatever, man.
But I thought it was.
I don't think he did anything wrong in that.
No, and I guess my end thought is when he said that, when I saw him say that, I was like, oh, he's trying to hype himself up. This is a moment of weakness, in my opinion. And I agree. He's like a really, really awesome player. I don't know if you'd rather have Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker. Like, those are really good players too. That like, woo, those are some good players. But that's the tier I'm thinking of. You know, like excellent fucking players, man. Paul George, to your example. But when Tatum says that, I find that to be such an interesting human moment, where I'm like, he means to say something to express confidence, but it very much comes off as fear. And I thought that was so interesting. This is what makes him interesting now to me. He is less robotic. He is more of a person who is trying to shape the thoughts in his head. And watching him struggle through the first 3 games just kind of supports that idea in my mind, that he is a person whose makeup and story is very much not done. I don't know what he is yet.
Yeah, I think when you look at Tatum's development, or even Jaylen Brown, I think this applies to both of them. The improvement of Tatum as a passer is impressive,
Awesome.
but it's also in line with the way that we're describing his advancement at other things. Mm-hmm. It's a very studied way of passing.
Yeah.
If you can beat your guy off the dribble one-on-one, the help's going to come from here, so you can kick it to that guy. You know, you can throw a lob to Robert Williams. Like it's very kind of cut and paste. If you do this, then this happens, and then you can make that play. It's reactive. And I feel like my favorite players are typically the ones who are precogs, the ones who understand how defenses move and can manipulate them. And I think that's why guys like Jokic or Harden or Draymond Green, like those guys, I feel like are
LeBron
a different.
James.
LeBron, of course, are a different variety of player and star, and whatever, people can say what they want about James Harden, but I mean, James Harden was a absurd offensive player this year. He was fantastic. Mm-hmm. I just feel like that what the Celtics run into is that between the two Jays, they just don't have that player who sees the game ahead of time, who is also a star. I think Al Horford is like a very smart player, and then maybe Marcus Smart. But the two Jays,
Brogdon.
Brogdon's a good player. They have a bunch of good players, but
They're good,
the
yeah.
ball has to be in the hands of their 2 best scorers, their 2 stars, and neither of those guys can really dribble. Neither of them can really create. And I think that's where you see them get bogged down now 2 years in a row.
And I wanna spend some time talking about Bam Adebayo. He is a wonderful player. There's a lot of Jimmy credit going around. Obviously, Jimmy is a transcendent folk hero. Like, I'm tired of people being like, who'd have thought? I'm like, yo, Jimmy's been good for a really long time. Like, this is his MO, right? So, but Bam, like, man, I really appreciate him. And I thought he had a bad series last year against the Celtics, but like, he is one of those defensive support players that cover up mistakes made by other guys. And I think they can afford to have like the Struces and the Caleb Martins, and there's all this talk about undrafted players. Like, true, they were not like touted for a reason. But when you have a player who can close out and is this at that long, especially someone who with the right instincts to stunt at the right times and to commit at the right times, he is a pain in the ass to play against, especially when you do not have extraordinary ball handlers and decision makers. Bam Adebayo is in the head of the Celtics.
He's been great, and I thought he had a few highlights last night that were just outrageous.
Yo, he's awesome. Yeah.
The
dunks.
He had 2 nice lob catches. That one was just awesome.
Yeah.
He's been great. We don't need to sing the praises of Heat culture any more than necessary. Like,
But Bam was as good in Kentucky. Kentucky culture.
I mean, Bam's great. Jimmy is Jimmy, and the contributions they're getting from these undrafted creative players who are out there, chucking up threes, attacking closeouts, moving the ball. Like, they just play really disciplined.
Yo, it starts from the top, right? It goes up to their coach, goes to Pat Riley, and then it's like Ron DeSantis is the guy that kind of influences the entire culture of that state.
I mean, look, I don't know what Joel Embiid is thinking. Who can say? He hasn't said anything publicly, but
Ron DeSantis.
I hope, right? No, but I'm hoping he is watching these games, which I'm sure he is, and just seeing the difference in how Miami plays and how Denver plays.
Ooh, the Knicks had Miami though.
Yeah, no, but I don't even mean Miami's greatness. Just seeing how they play, and I hope Joe's embarrassed. Like, I hope he is.
Oh, he is. I mean, yeah, for sure.
I'm just saying, I hope he is embarrassed at the way that Doc Rivers and he played. When you look at how other teams move the ball, how they play unselfishly, how they play crisp, how they avoid mistakes, and I hope he sees that. And his response the day after was he needs to get better as a ball handler on the perimeter. I'm like, no, dude, no, you are awesome. You are awesome. The team just needs a new coach, and they need to play a different variety of basketball that you are capable of doing.
And get lucky in the sense that, like, people are pulling up Jimmy Butler's quote about after his loss last season against the Celtics. He's like, we're going to come back and beat them. And I'm like, that's fair, but if he doesn't, no one's going to dig that up. And I'm just going to say this for the sake of the perfect pod, but I don't care what Joel Embiid thinks, because if he can just run up to the right matchup at the right time, he's going to do well. And I think the Heat match up really great against the Celtics, and they didn't match up this great against the Knicks. They beat the Knicks. When I say the Knicks could have beat them, I'm like, quickly imploded, and Randall had a tough time, but the Heat and the Knicks were more interesting. The Heat and the Celtics, less so, as we're seeing. So I don't care what Joel Embiid is embarrassed of. I don't think he should be embarrassed at all. He just needs like the right bracket and the right health, and he was hurt. So like maybe he has to do nothing.
To me, Joe does have to do something though. But maybe
Can Tobias score more than 2 points though, right? Like,
well, what I mean is that. Yeah. I mean, that's true too. I mean, I'm not even blaming the loss on Joe. I'm just saying, I hope he sees the value of changing the way that the Sixers play, and I'm hoping that the new coach will be embraced in trying to do, a different approach to offense. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm saying, look, yes, if you put better players that fit around Embiid and Harden, I am really confident that they will play extremely well. That Joe won't have another one of these like bummer ass closeout games where he shoots poorly, turns the ball over. I just don't think that'll happen if you get a better offensive system. But anyway, enough about the Sixers. Whatever. We've talked about that. They're in a great place. Doc is gone. We'll see what happens. We've talked Celtics Heat. The other series in the West that looked as if it was going to be a delightful one is now also 3-0. And the Nuggets on Sunday night won another fairly close game, but now that series is done.
I love Nikola Jokic. We've talked about the MVP stuff. We've talked about his weaknesses, to be honest. My curiosities in the middle of the season, thinking like we're watching one of the all-time greats. You dashed my hopes of that, my hope punk of that, and you were right. You were correct. It wasn't time yet. But he looks good. I'm really enjoying this series. He's got healthy, fast players around him. He himself, because of that, is making even quicker decisions. Like, they're having fun out there, man. It's like Globetrotter stuff.
I think what's pretty amazing about the Nuggets is the decision-making tree. Like the tyranny of responsibility is very, very cool. Where it's like you've got Jokic as this maestro of scoring and facilitation, that if you start with him, the decision-making process begins in such a wonderful place.
Yeah, man.
But then you have Murray, who was not really very good this year. I mean, we know he's coming off injuries, but he did not have a great season. He's not a good defender. I'm always of the mind that Murray is, he falls into the category of kind of like many excellent scoring two guards.
For sure.
Or combo guards. There are a lot of those guys in the league. But when he is hitting difficult shots and playing well, and then you have like Porter Jr., who is like basically your third option. It's not really needed, but it's like a nice little, he's the blueberries and the pancakes, if you want, You got him. And then you have all these role players like KCP and
head, right?
Bruce Brown and Aaron Gordon. There's just a nice, I guess, a nice structure to the way that they play basketball.
I hate that team around Jokic, though. I'll stick by that. Like, they're playing well.
But this is what I mean. Early in the season, they really annoyed me.
Yeah.
And but right now, when they are getting shot making, when Bruce Brown and KCP are draining threes, it does look a lot more palatable than earlier in the season.
A thought I had watching this demolition was we're gonna talk about Jokic, and we're gonna talk about Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., all these things, even the veterans, Green. It comes down to, and the Lakers making the right moves. Hachimura, Hillbilly Kobe becoming like an awesome player. I'm a big fan. It's cool. LeBron just got old, man. Like, if there was always going to be a time, and Pelinka made this gamble, and I would have too. He won a championship, the toughest championship in the history of the NBA. But the gamble was at some point LeBron is going to get old. We've never seen it. This does not. We're not precogs like Tom Cruise and Minority Report. We don't know when his age is going to hit. And he's had matchups where he's been able to survive. But against the best player on earth with speed and skill, his age really makes an appearance.
Yeah, I think that's true. I kind of noticed it for the first time, a couple series ago.
Sure.
Where, like, LeBron is tired.
Yeah.
Even in the play-in game.
Yeah.
At the end of it, he didn't hold off the defender on inbounds passes in the way that he normally does. He wasn't throwing passes with much zip.
Yeah, man.
This guy's tired.
Yeah.
And then he had that really cool moment a few games ago where he just played super hard, and then you just saw him check himself out exhausted.
Yeah, dude, he's old. He's old.
Yeah, the guy's 38 years old. What do you want from him?
Exactly, man. Like, yo, it is amazing what he's doing at this age. It's so impressive. But Jokic is too good.
He's the age that Jordan was on the Wizards. People
Yes.
just need to remember that.
Yes, exactly. And I think LeBron looks like he can play forever. But it sucks that it is fitting that he makes that maybe transition to being an on-court coach or this amazing facilitator who could have moments. But now he needs to be a Robin, kind of. And who else to show us that than Nikola Jokic, who's like two-time MVP as recently as the last two seasons.
I mean, LeBron averaging 23.5, 10 boards, 6.3 assists. Those are
Amazing.
Those are great numbers. They're not in line with his career numbers, obviously, but that's his postseason numbers this year. And like as you said, Jokic is in his prime.
Yeah.
Jokic didn't even have that good of a game last game.
I would argue there's no bad Jokic game. Like, his stats maybe aren't great, and of course some are better than others, but having him on the court, it just beats the Lakers.
Yeah. I mean, but to the Lakers' credit, they've been in all these games, and
yeah, that's still a good
basically
team.
Down the stretch, it's just apparent that the Nuggets are the number one seed and the Lakers are a playing team.
Yeah. And I don't know, a part of this, the way the NBA is ending, and you know how I feel about the playoffs. This feels like a celebration, But it is not about coin flips at this point in these conference finals. The Lakers and Celtics aren't as good as the Heat and Nuggets. And
I mean, you look at Jokic. He's like whatever advanced stats, but just he's leading the league in the postseason in like per and win shares for 48 and BPM and all that stuff always. But you look at it and you're like, this dude is leading in assist rate, which is amazing, obviously. But beyond that, this is a guy who did not score that much during the regular season, but he's averaging 30 a game in the postseason. Yeah. During the regular season, he averaged 24. Yeah. I mean, he has upped his scoring significantly while still being, an awesome facilitator.
He's ramped up his game for sure.
He's been, but what's a funny point though? I just want to make this before we stop lauding this fat fuck.
Yo, he looks good though. He's on that Ozempic. You know it.
No, I'm joking.
He looks good.
he's on that Ozempic. He's not chewing his fingernails. But
stop buying art.
But I will say, his hyper efficiency from the regular season doesn't carry over to the playoffs because his scoring goes up. That was just one thing that I think is worth pointing out.
Which people love, which casuals love the scoring going up over any efficiency numbers.
Yeah, I just mean when people say, well, this guy, but look at his scoring efficiency, I'm like, but when he does score more and he scores 30 a game, like other leading scorers in the league, his efficiency goes from being supernatural to just very good. I mean, like excellent, fucking excellent. This is not a knock on him. Yeah. I just feel like sometimes when Jokic is discussed, we don't talk enough about the relationship between like upping your scoring volume and keeping your efficiency like a berserk level. It's just extremely difficult to do.
Stats are really confusing in the playoffs. Sample size, opponents, compared to players who are bounced in the first round. We're doing all this weird stuff. And I love Jokic's quote being like, well, you had kind of a flex game in game 3. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm playing LeBron James. There are no it's happening now. I'm trying to win these games, man. And I love that about him. I'm a Jokic fan. I like how dope he is. I love his brothers. It's weird. It's good for the NBA, or bad for the NBA. But, I was going to say, the celebration that starts in the conference finals, like this league is kind of complicated sometimes because where am I going with this? It's like I hate the ice cold takes thing. I don't like being right sucks too, kind of. It's like we've talked about the Celtics forever, like we do every East team and their weaknesses and stuff. Like we weren't right, we just watched games and saw them, right? And LeBron getting older isn't there's not many takes to draw from this. He got old. Yet we knew Jokic was good. Who'd have thought the Nuggets would get here? Number 1 seed. Jokic was second in MVP voting. I don't know what to say to that, and it's hard to engage with NBA Twitter at this point in the season because it's a lot of I told you so, or I admit that I'm wrong. I'm like, yes, but not really. I don't know. Sadly there's less Schadenfreude than I would hope there would be.
Well, someone who came up with a really sad attempt to dunk on me because of my post from a couple of months ago saying the Knicks were the second best team in the East.
They were. We're watching stuff in real time, right?
They were. And someone who was a Celtics fan tried to post it yesterday. I was like, dude.
Yeah, what are we doing?
Are you backing me up?
Yeah. Well,
win a game or two against Boston and then against the Heat, and then you can talk. Because right now,
the
Knicks are looking
best,
the second best team in the East.
I was gonna say after the Bucks, the Sixers, the Celtics have been exposed, and the Knicks are the only one who stressed out the Heat. Looks like there's 2 teams in the East, and that's the Knicks and the Heat. Whatever.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I was like, that's a weird timing for a dunk.
Yeah. Right, but obviously nuance is not the thing, but I just have trouble, like, man, I like basketball players. I I think the fun part of it is like the media spin, and we get on it with the BMM and all that. Like, this is exactly who Jason Tatum's always been. This is exactly who Jaylen Brown's always been. This is Jokic. These are all these things, right? Jimmy Butler is Jimmy. He is him. But like, I find less pleasure in that kind of thinking when I watch these games. I find myself a little disappointed that these aren't hazier outcomes. I want game sevens, man. I want good game sevens. Sweeps are not fun.
I can never be disappointed by the Celtics getting drubbed.
Fair,
but
totally.
I do wish the West was a more competitive series. I think this playoffs overall has been really entertaining.
I love it. Yeah.
I feel like I've obviously we always watch tons of the playoffs, but I feel like it's been a full-time job, and we've just watched all the games. I feel like every day it's like, well, I don't know what to do today because there's basketball on, and it's just been going on for like a month and change. And I think it's because the Sixers are must-watch, the Knicks are must-watch. You had so many fun teams like the Kings and the Warriors and the Lakers. Like, it's just been a cool-ass playoffs. And yeah, I'm starting to feel that like first chill in the air.
That's right.
Like, oh, what's that shiver? I was out here drinking my drink of the summer, my mango martini, and I got this leaf fell in my drink. I was like, what's on the horizon? And we're like, oh right, the end of basketball. Shit.
Yeah, it feels. Yeah, the grasshopper and the ant, right? I'm like, ooh, all right, time to get that KBB fired up. It's Wemby o'clock, you know?
I'm like, oh man, there's going to be a night without basketball soon. I don't know what I'll do.
Very soon. Yeah, I've been enjoying these games and watching them as like a celebration. I wish the Celtics won like 2 or 3 games. Like, it's fun when it is
I'm going to pretend you didn't say that.
Well, yo,
the BMM has infiltrated.
Oh, I got no love for the BMM, but to deprive the BMM of oxygen is no fun either. When
I wish the Celtics won. I quote Andrew Cuo. Wow.
I wish they won a couple games. You're trying to chef cat me. Yeah, but like it is. Yo, a conference finals that is a sweep or a gentleman's sweep is not that interesting. And when we have the main characters of the BMM being like, break it down, fire the coach, trade Jaylen Brown, I'm like, that's not as fun as if they're just like, are we the best duo of all time? You know, like, this all started with, can Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum coexist? I don't know.
Well, you mentioned Wemby, so let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
There were some whispers that the NBA rigged the lottery so that the French phenomenon,
What?
one of the greatest prospects in history. I think people went overboard saying in sports or of all time, but he is...
In the last 5 years is not even true.
I mean, Zion was a huge sensation. Now, look, that doesn't mean that Wemby isn't that level of prospect, but I will say there has been plenty of guys who are very hyped up. But
Tim Duncan, Yao Ming.
He is unique.
Yeah. LeBron James.
And people are saying they're going to rig this for the Spurs, and lo and behold, he went to the Spurs. Now, I ask you this, Andrew Cuo. Why would the NBA rig it for the Spurs?
I don't know. I immediately thought that. Respect to Popovich has been established. He's a legend. The Spurs, very small market. The Spurs, a lot of success. It's not like the league is, respect to San Antonio, respect to, as you can read in The Joy of Basketball, we pay our respects to the Spurs, man. Manu Ginobili is one of the missed opportunities of fans everywhere. Like, he was special. And we talk about him as much as we can. But the Spurs don't make this league a better place. Like, the Spurs being great is not like thrilling for the league. It's a small market. Respect to San Antonio as always. Remember the Alamo. But like, I don't know why you would say, yo, him and Jeremy Sohan is going to do some damage. Like, we just need to unlock Devin Vassell over here. Like, what are we doing? Malachi Brannon's like, ooh, he's going to go off.
Yeah, I think the idea that the NBA needs the Spurs to be good doesn't really hold up. I would also say, though, they are not a small market at all. So just in the defense of the conspiracy theorists, they are bigger than Dallas. You know, they're a fairly large market. They're ranked 8th, I believe, or 7th in population. In the
Maybe
US.
I'm talking about like viewership and eyes, because Atlanta is one of the biggest cities in America, and that is a small market NBA team. Like, they can't get momentum there. But the Spurs have fans for sure.
Yeah, right. My only take was that would they really be trying to reward 74-year-old Greg Popovich to lure him into coaching until he's 90 years old or something? Like,
No.
what?
Yeah.
The conspiracy thing didn't really pan out to me.
Houston
I will say,
is a
however,
conspiracy, in my opinion.
I will say, I think I kind of like the idea of him playing with LaMelo or going to Detroit and playing with Cade. Like, there were some cool combinations that, as a viewer, I think would have been fun. And you could have thought about these like dynamic young duos and how you just like want to watch them.
Jalen Green, Jabari Smith.
Even with Orlando, there was just a bunch of combinations of him on these like rebuilding organizations that would have given them more of a fully formed idea. Or he goes to OKC and you're like, oh shit, it's Chet and Wemby. But I will say the Spurs, maybe because they don't have that sort of rebuild underway, that I like how he now just defines that organization's future and a way that I think the Spurs will also like tend to him well. That
They're bringing back Parker, Manu, and Duncan to help him, right?
Yeah, that they have this history, and now he is part of that, of Duncan and David Robinson, that his career is not going to get screwed up by San Antonio. And I think that makes me... Well, I just mean he might get hurt. He might not be great. There could be those problems, but I don't think
Let's
the
not
Spurs...
forget the Kawhi situation, though.
Yeah, well, we know what happened there.
Yeah.
That was a sneaker deal thing.
Yeah.
That
They didn't handle that well, though.
What did they do? He asked for a trade. What were they supposed to do?
I mean, it wasn't absolute. Whatever. I mean, I think differently about that situation, maybe. I mean, there's always negotiation. This is not like physics.
Well, sure. I just mean they did develop Kawhi into being a phenomenal player, though.
For sure.
So we can talk about how he departed from there and his injuries and all those kind of things. But he was obviously developed in a way that makes you optimistic for how they'll approach turning Wemby, into the superstar that he's capable of becoming.
Or is he going to be Lonnie Walker, right? Or Jakob Pertl? Because Wemby, I mean, he's enticing as an idea, but he's like not a good shooter. He's kind of skinny. If he gets bigger, is he going to be that player who dances around? Like, I have many doubts about Wemby.
I don't.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I
they're
think-
calling him a
I
Hall
think-
of Famer already.
Sure. No, I mean, I get all the hype, but I mean,
Is he going to be as good as Porzingis?
yeah,
Porzingis
he's going
is
to be way
good.
better.
But how can we tell? Because he's so far not as good. He can't shoot as well. He's like 30% from three.
But he can shoot enough.
That's fair.
That's what I mean. He can shoot enough, and he's super young.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I mean about the Spurs. They're going to give him, their same famed shooting coach. I think he will end up being a very good shooter. I think there are habits that he has, like just taking long mid-range jumpers and stuff and fadeaways
Yeah.
that aren't great.
Get him in the
But
building.
I just-
But
that's what I mean. I think they will have him add, weight and strength if his frame can endure that. I think they will be cautious about his feet and his ankles and his health. I think he will become a very good shooter. I look at him and his combination of ball handling, and it's just the enormity of how big he is. It's crazy. Like the stuff he does when he does a drop step and then like weirdly just like reaches over and dunks. You're like, oh, you can just do things that no one else has a prayer of that aren't even defendable because you're just 7'4" with like a crazy wingspan. It's just a joke, the stuff he's physically able to do.
And I'm looking forward to teams in the West kind of counteracting him. It's like, well, let's roster an extra huge dude, right? And it's going to be cool to watch the league like evolve with this new kind of player. It's like, yeah, let's see if we can mess around with him. There's that famous clip of Kenny Lofton Jr. backing him down. And Kenny Lofton Jr.'s body positive, but he's not tall, right? He's just like a good shape for boxing out. And like, I'm interested. When I say I have doubts, the same doubts I have with Chet, like obviously you take them like top 3, top 1 in Wemby's case for sure. The NBA, like Time Lord is an amazing player, and it's hard to play him that much, right? And he's a different kind of player than Wemby, but speed is everything. If Wemby can remain fast, then sure. I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I just feel like, Wemby shooting 83% from the line.
Great.
I think that guy is going to be an extremely good shooter. I know he's only shooting, 29% from 3 for his like European career.
With subpar competition too.
And again, he's just so young. I think if you look at that free throw percentage and you look at his form, I'm not worried about him being a very good shooter down the line.
Yeah.
And then you become, I guess, but I'm with you on like the Porzingis model of like rim protecting shot blocker who also shoots threes.
Spacer.
That's just really valuable. You just put him on the court. But I do think that Wemby's ability to dribble the ball and his mobility and like just the way he moves is very different from Porzingis, and I think that's what makes him unique. It's not just that he's big as fuck and has these skills. It's that these guys, Chet's a little like that too. Like, man, it's just crazy how these guys move at that size now.
It's crazy, and I'm glad I kind of want to call back to Spo. Everyone calls him like the best coach alive, and I think he probably might be, but I think we mentioned it on this pod, like during the Knicks series, the Heat were handsy, and it really was frustrating to players who are big and dribbled, Julius Randle, right? And in the Celtics series, also very handsy, just like Lowry, Jimmy, all these guys, if they didn't have an advantage physically, they had their hands in the right places. And Spo, they mic'd him up in, I think it was game 2. He was like, hey guys, remember the hands. Always try to slap the ball out of their hands, And I thought about, when I was watching that, I thought about Wembanyama a little bit. Because, like, I don't think Porzingis' strength was his dribbling, even though he could do it. He was great at dribbling for a big. Crossovers, through the legs, everything. But just physically, the ball traveling that distance, you got like Kyle Lowry there being like, I'm just waiting for my moment here, And I feel like I really enjoy players like Evan Mobley because while they can create their own shot and dribble, he kind of like spots up and waits for his moments. He's more efficient with his movements. You don't want players like Wemby and Chet dancing, right?
Yeah, I agree. And there are times when I watch highlights from him that people marvel at. I'm like, there's just too much going on there.
Right.
Like, you didn't need to do that spin move and then shoot off the back foot. Right. It's aesthetically and physically, like, incredible. Like, wow, a guy that size has this kind of agility.
Yeah.
But also, I'm like, that's not really great basketball, though.
Right.
You don't need to shoot a spinning fadeaway there.
Right.
But also, again, they're so young, and you
exactly.
You watch highlights from like Scooter.
Scoot.
Dude, Scoot. The guy takes so many long pull-up twos. You're just like, man, that's right. You're a kid.
Yeah. But there have been kids who have excelled at this age already. And
I mean, they are. These guys are excelling. You know, they're going to be like top picks in the draft. I just mean you have to remember as a hope punk that we are looking at, like, we are not looking at refinement culture. We are looking at guys who are like learning to do things on a basketball court and play certain ways, and you just never know if they're going to shed those tendencies or not. It's like TBD.
And this is kind of what I mean, right? Like, we call these projects, and I think all of these guys are projects. Even Brandon Miller, to a degree, he's probably the most polished. But Luka was not a project. Zion was not a project. LeBron was not a project. TD, Yao, not projects. They were good already. You just insert them in, and they're good. Chet Holmgren would take some time. We knew this, and it's worth the wait, absolutely. But Wembanyama is going to take time. I don't think you can just insert him in a game like Luka Doncic or LeBron James and have them be like, they weren't perfect, but they really are valuable to our team immediately.
I can't tell.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think him playing against adults and being the MVP of the league,
Luka?
of putting up, as Luka did too.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying both Wemby and Luka.
Yeah.
You know, they're playing against adults. They're the best player in those leagues. Wemby put up 20-something a game.
24, 11, and 2.
On a true shooting percentage of like
36.
60% true shooting percentage, maybe 59%, whatever.
21.9, 9.9, 2.2 with 3.2 blocks.
Like, I don't think he's going to struggle at everything coming into the league.
I
think
agree.
he will be.
Yeah.
I think he will be a great shot blocker. I think he'll be a great lob threat. He's mobile. He gets down the court. I think there's stuff that his size just will enable him to do on a ridiculously high level because there's no one else.
His size and
has
speed.
his dimensions.
Yeah.
His mobility and size, I think, is. I don't think he's going to be like.
7'5", man.
I don't think he's going to be like a
tall.
knockdown 3-point shooter right away, necessarily. But yeah, he's going to draw fouls. He's going to block shots. He's going to get out in transition. He's going to catch lobs.
He
just
towers over Porzingis.
He's so fucking huge.
He towers over Porzingis. Yeah, and like, you know, that quote was interesting when he said, "I want to win now," and I thought that was great because fuck yeah, and that is he's one of the best players on the planet, and then you look at that roster, and I quite like it. Sohan, doesn't profile as a bucket getter, but he's awesome. I really liked him in the draft. And then you have a bunch of guys like the 2-guard prototype that you're talking about. There's work to be done in San Antonio, but they have a lot of cap space, and they might suffer through another losing season. But yeah, I'm jealous of Spurs fans. It's cool.
Yeah, and I think I'm really excited to watch him play. I think you look at the way that the draft shook out. I'm glad he didn't go to like Portland. I'm glad he didn't go to Detroit. Mm-hmm. Like Spurs actually are a nice destination for him. I do think. I'm glad he didn't go to Houston.
How come you didn't want to go to Detroit or Houston?
I'm saying I like those ideas, but like him in San Antonio, it just redefined the franchise, I think, which is cool. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I've settled on.
Kate Cunningham?
No, I'm saying I love those as like a spectator, like him and Cade.
Jalen Ivey, like
beef stew, right? No, I'm saying no. They were far more closer to being like an actual team than the Spurs are.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know what? The Spurs are a team that I would have had no interest in whatsoever, and they have been like resuscitated by this occurring. They don't have I'll still watch the Pistons for just Cade. Or
will you? I mean, they have no star there. Like Cade is awesome.
We'll see.
I mean,
again, I wasn't like anti-Detroit. The only place I didn't want him to go was Houston.
How come? That was my number one.
I just don't like their players other than Sengun.
The Goon. I like Tyrese quite a bit.
Yeah, he's cool.
I also like Jalen Green. I don't think he profiles to be like a killer, but like that's a really good pick.
I find Jabari Smith kind of boring. It's
not my
I
guy.
think
Yeah.
he might end up being a good player. He played better down the stretch. I think. I mean, look, Houston makes sense for signing Harden though, because he's one of the few guys who can actually coalesce that group of guys into I think something coalesce into something functional.
I mean, I liked Houston not necessarily because of the players they have there. Like Porter Jr. is not my guy, but they have enough assets there to turn a bunch of these guys we're talking about. Like Jalen Green would be an extremely valuable market piece. And if you get a good coach in there, Ime Udoka, and you get a James Harden, weirdly, and then you commit to Wemby, those guys would return another cheeseburger of a player. Like a serious player, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if I'm going to go and bring in Udoka, I think the selling point is that you're going to try to spend some money.
I agree. And if Jalen Green, let's say Jabari Smith is on the block, what? Like, okay, who do you want? Do you want Dame Lillard? You know, like, and we'll throw in Terry Eason or Jalen Green and Jabari are on the block. It's like, okay, which all NBA player would you like?
I think, when they're talking about the Trailblazers, they're like, we're gonna package these things up and bring back like an elite wing. I'm like, well, which one?
I know.
Name him.
I know. Yeah.
Who's this guy you're referring to?
Yeah. I mean, in a vacuum, would you rather have Jalen Green or Julius Randle? No, but we never know until we know, right? There's a lot of rumors of Paul George, so that would not be a shock if Paul George moved. But like, take any all NBA player, and if you are the Rockets and you make a couple of those guys available, man, the conversations are interesting at least.
Well, that's what's funny about OKC, and we can talk about all this off-season stuff another time. It's just that by already being good, having Holmgren on the way back from injury, you can speculate that they'll be a pretty good team. And at that point, you're saying, okay, our own draft picks now aren't that valuable.
Yeah, of course.
They're going to be mid-range picks, and we still have draft capital from other teams, from all these other trades we've made, whether it's dealing off their own superstars or accepting bad contracts. They have this whole trove of first-round picks. Do you just say, wait a minute, if we're going to be pretty good, well, why don't we actually try to trade for Paul George or whatever? Yeah. We say we got all these picks, and now we got some good players. Why don't we actually try to win a title here? Yeah. Like, where do you switch that button? I don't know.
I don't know either, right? I mean, we can talk about this stuff in the doldrums of the NBA, but yeah, man, the conference finals are like going, and I'm already out the door, man.
You know what? I think we were able to drop a perfect pod today.
Why?
It's because I watch Mystic River.
Is that my daughter? Is that my daughter? Yeah. Well, I watched. What's that Daniel Stern Celtics movie? Celtic Pride. Do I watch that?
Oh,
4 or 5?
Yeah. That'd be helpful. I mean, usually, I feel like my pods really improve when I watch Manchester by the Sea, like several times, in the week leading up to it. This morning I watched. I woke up super early, and watched Spotlight twice.
Oh, amazing! That probably was the same time I was watching the Wahlberg-led Transformers movies 2 or 3 times before lunch.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.